Hi everyone and welcome. Jenny Marples here from pushingtherightbuttons.blogspot.com. So today we're going to be exploring two brand new products, both launched at the recent Creativation show. The first of which is Tim Holtz's new Distress Resist Spray. It's a textured resist spray, and what that means is that it will act as a resist if left to dry, and it will also form a resist when dry to inks which are applied over it. The other exciting thing about this is that when it's sprayed, it can form either a fine mist, or else you can create droplets to add beads which remain raised and textured whilst you've still got them onto your surface. And it works perfectly with embossing powders. So I'm going to show you how you can combine it with, as I said, another brand new product. This is one of the baked texture embossing powder range, which has come from a collaboration between Seth Apter and Emerald Creek Crafts. This one in particular is called Chunky Rust, and the reason for using it today is because it has a texture which is slightly different to your regular embossing powder, which you'll be used to having granules which melt to a nice smooth finish. This actually has an element to it which is more fluffy. So that means that you actually get added texture in there and a proper look of rust when you use it. To show you more, let's get started with a very simple demonstration. Here I've got one of the tiny tags. It's a heavy stock tag, perfect for mixed media. Comes from Ranger. They do a number of different sizes. So I'm going to begin first of all with the Distress Resist spray. Now you'll see here I've just brought in my blue cat litter tray. I don't have cats, but I do need the tray because you need to make sure that you protect the surface and the surrounding area whenever you're using this, because whatever it sticks to, it will remain stuck and takes a bit more work clearing off. So very easy to use. I'm going to remove the lid, and you'll see it comes with a spray nozzle, and I've been using mine quite a bit. It hasn't stuck at all, it hasn't gunged up, but what you can do is just wipe away the glue from the nozzle when you've finished using it. Okay, so we're going to go in, and I want some really good coverage on this first of all, so I'm going to go in up close and give it a good mist. You'll see there that I've really soaked the bottom of that tag, okay, and it does give that kind of liquid distress ink finish that you're used to seeing. Now then, let's move this out the way. I want to make sure that my surface is cleaned off, ready for the next time I use it. And this is now nice and wet, so this is perfect for putting on the embossing powder. So bringing in a sheet of paper just to collect the excess, and I'm going to shake on the embossing powder. As I said, this is Chunky Rust, and just smoothing it over. Just going to remove some of the excess, and I'll hold it up to the camera so that you can see there that it's not just your smooth granules. There are actually, as I said, these fluffy elements to it to create that look of proper rust. Okay, so remove the excess and put it back into the pot. There we go. Okay, pop that out the way. So now to heat. What I would say with this is that when you are using it, I would strongly recommend that you use your heat gun. You actually hold it some distance. Particularly, I've got the Ranger Heat It tool here, which has a slower blow, as it were, so not quite so fierce. I know some others use embossing tools which have a real powerful force to them, and as with all embossing powders, you're simply going to end up blowing a lot of your embossing powder off the surface. So if you start from some distance and just start to heat the surface, you'll see I'm using tweezers here because I've got quite a small tag and my fingers aren't made from asbestos, and so I find it safer to use this on a smaller area. If it's a larger area, I can hold the side of the card, no problem. So I'm just starting to heat now. And as I start to get some heat on it, and as the granules, because there are the usual metallic granules that are in embossing powders, those are mixed in with the textured element. So as those are starting to heat and melt, so they are melting and combining with the textured element, and you can start to go in a lot closer. Another thing that I found with this is that actually it's really good. You can't overheat this stuff at all. In fact, the more you heat it, the better the look. I know with some embossing powders, they'll start to, if they've got a nice glossy finish to them, they'll actually start to dissipate and go matte. I found with all of the Emerald Creek embossing powders that you will get changes in reactions and changes in looks, but actually they work beautifully because of the different mixtures and different powders that they have in with that added heat. So don't be afraid to go in and really get into heating up that element. Okay, so we're going to stop at this point. Another tip for you is don't be tempted to go straight in with your finger and start feeling that texture. I know it's an urge we all have, but you are in danger of, as with all embossing powders, if you stick your finger in it, first of all, you might just burn your finger. The second thing is that you're going to affect that surface, which is still molten and is still drying. So it's a good idea to set this aside and allow it to really dry off properly and cool down properly, so that the surfaces have chance to dry solidly in place. But again, just to hold that up so that you can see, hopefully, the lovely mix of texture on there, and the fact that it's got some shiny elements to it, but it also has that matte raised element to it there. Okay, so now for something, this looks great. And obviously you can go in with your inks. I actually did one earlier where I went in with some Distress Spray stain, and I actually sprayed over the top. So you can see it will still work nicely if you want to add the colour afterwards. But let's try now to add the colour beforehand. So this time I'm going to use a larger of the same tags. So again, this is the mixed media heavy cardstock. Perfect for adding all these different surfaces, again using the cat litter tray because I'm protecting the area around. And first of all, I'll go in with, of course, Rusty Hinge, which has a very good base cover, a nice orangey colour to it, which works perfectly if you're trying to recreate the look of rust. The other thing that I'm going in with here is Vintage Photo, just to add some darker spots. That's it. And I will add just a tiny spritz of water just to get that ink moving around, and it works really well to now just move up and down the card. Okay, there we are. So clean off the surface, ready for the next application. Move that out the way. Let's get this tag dried off so that we can have a bit more fun. Again, going in and drying off that colour. You can add as many layers as you'll know. The ink is translucent, so you can go in and add these layers and create some real depth to the colour that you get on your tag. So allow some of those drips to run away from the edges. If you force them into the middle by tipping your tag, you're going to get some, again, realistic effects. There we are. So let's just pat that dry. And you'll see there we've got some lovely colour on there, a look of real rust. If you've got spots that you actually want to cover up, what you can do is just go in with your distress ink and your blender tool and cover those areas. But for now, we're just going to move on to the next stage, which is again adding some of the Distress Resistor spray. Now I'm going to do it in a slightly different way this time. What I would say is the further away you hold the bottle, so if you're holding it right up here, you're going to get some nice fine droplets and mist. If you hold up close, you're going to get a more concentrated patch into one particular area of your tag. But another approach to using this is to actually remove the spray element and just apply by tapping onto your tag, because in this way you can see you can get some of those nice big splodges, and you'll see what I mean here by, hopefully with the darker background, the fact that this is now beading and that texture is not moving away, it's not dissipating, it's not leveling out. Those droplets remain exactly in place where you want them. So that's the beauty of this new Distress Resist spray. Again, let's remove any excess from the tray. I'm not drying this at all. If I wanted to go in and blend over with inks, all I would do would be to dry with a heat gun, and then I could apply some ink over the top, and that would then show through the underneath colours. But this time we're going back in with our embossing powder, so let's bring in the protective sheet again. And here's our baked texture. So I'm going to sprinkle that over the tag. It's actually coating a little onto the surface of the tag as well as those particular drops. The reason being that the ink will still be slightly wet. For this experiment that's perfect, because I want to show you the difference between the textured bumps and the regular metallic element to the embossing powder. What I would suggest, if you want very defined raised areas without coverage of the whole tag, my suggestion would be to use your anti-static bag and to just brush over the surface, and then you'll find that any excess won't stick to the background in quite the same way. So again, we're going to go in from a distance and just start to heat up. Let's move that round to the side, working round, just heating it up. And I am moving at this stage. I know the golden rule with embossing powder is to stay in one place until it's melted and then move around. But what I'm doing at this point is just it's a first fix, making sure that that embossing powder is in place. I'm going to go then back in with my tweezers, just so I can hold this closer, hold it away from the surface, the craft mat surface, because if you've got your tag free behind, you'll find that the powder will melt that much quicker. So now I can really start to go in there and heat the powders, and you'll see that those lumps, those textured lumps, remain on the surface as the powder melts, and you've got the combination of the metallic look, but also you're getting that delicious matte fuzzy look in a way. That's probably the best way I can describe it, is a real fuzzy look to it. Let's turn this round. That's it. And you can see that this hasn't been particularly hard to do. No technical expertise particularly required. It does help, as I say, having a heat tool which doesn't send the powder flying everywhere, but as I said, if you take it from a distance, if you have got one of the higher speed heat guns, then it would be an idea to hold from a distance, and then you can work in close, as it were, here. And we're going to leave it at that so that you can see, hopefully, the difference there between those textured lumps which still remain and also these matte fuzzier patches. Okay, and that raised, can you see the raised lumps there? That texture, the resist spray has not, flattened out in any way. and works really beautifully to get a very authentic look of rust. I'm just going to show you another example here. Each example will come out differently, and here's another one. I added slightly more pronounced drips on this one and did go back in and add some more ink as well. And just to compare, you'll see what I mean. There's a genuine piece of rust. Okay, that's an old rusty ring, and you'll see what I mean there by you've got the metallic elements, but then you've also got that the matte raised area. And just as a final example here, to show that you don't need to just do this onto your inked backgrounds. This, I've actually used the Distress paints and a combination of the oranges and the browns and a little bit of the metallics in there as well, just to get that beautiful metal effect. And then I've gone in and done exactly the same as before in terms of spritzing direct from the bottle, spritzing from a distance to get the uneven bumps, the beads of resist spray, and then covered in the powder. Again, that gives a really realistic look. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing those experiments. If you have any questions, if there's anything you need to ask, then please make sure you leave comments below. As I said, I know these products are now just coming out from our retailers, and they'll be hitting your doorsteps very soon. So hopefully when you get them, you'll enjoy having a good play and finding out the other things that you can do with them. Okay, time for me to disappear and do some more experimenting. If you enjoyed what you've seen, please make sure you give me a thumbs up in the box below. Also, if you're new to the channel or you've seen things that you really like, please make sure you subscribe, and I shall see you very soon.